This is all theater. This is all just political theater.
Political theater. Political theater.
Pure political
Theater.
Theater.
Political theater.
The
Nefarious.
Significant and protracted.
political
theater for political theater's sake.
I yield back.
From Washington, this is Political Theater, Roll Call's review of the spectacle of politics on Capitol Hill and across the country. I'm Jason Dick.
Well, welcome back to Political Theater. Roads are always a very handy metaphor for whatever story you're working on in politics. There are, roads to ruin, roads to the majority, roads going everywhere. But sometimes you're actually writing about an actual road that is a metaphor, but also serves as just a handy device in talking about campaigns. And that brings me to Nathan Gonzales, publisher and founder of Inside Elections and Roll Call's Elections Analyst. Nathan, we're going to talk about some roads, an actual road that starts, I guess I could say it starts or ends in your backyard, right? In the Pacific Northwest or in Southern California, depending on your perspective. But welcome back to Political Theater. I promise you listeners out there, if you're still with us, we'll cut through the gibberish at some point that I'm spewing and actually get to politics. But Nathan, how are you?
I'm doing well. Always a pleasure, always fun, and even better if we get to talk about the Pacific Northwest. So that's great. It
does. I was thinking at one point there was a possible vacation plan floated by some friends to go to Puget Sound this year, and I was like, well, I've been to Puget Sound, and I realized it had been a long time since I'd been to Washington, Seattle, Vancouver, Portland. All those areas. I mean, the years sort of fly by, but it's interesting because, I mean, obviously the media markets are in, Los Angeles, New York, Washington, Texas, and Florida get a lot of attention, from media just because of their population centers. Chicago, the Midwest, have with their proximity and sort of mature media markets and populations. And California extends, so far up, and then all of a sudden it's like people forget sometimes that there's something north of San Francisco, two other states, and as well as wine country. And I think that again, when you look at some of the politics of these states, they're not very simple, even though they've gone Democratic. Washington, Oregon, and California have gone Democratic, at the federal level for quite some time, but they're pretty complicated places. And that's why I'm glad you are writing about this. Let's talk about the series that you're writing, because it starts on Interstate 5 as the road that I teased at the beginning, long ago, at the beginning of this podcast, and the series and why you're doing it when we talk about House campaigns and how they might lead up to the majority in this year's election.
Yeah, well, I figured we do often some of the common political language is talking about the path to the majority and which party is it easier for, and what seats make up that. So then I started to think about, all right, what roads are actually, what competitive congressional districts are along actual roads. And I-5 or Interstate 5 is the main artery on the West Coast. It goes from Canada all the way down to Mexico, similar to those of you that are on the East Coast, similar to 95. Which we may or may not, actually it will be part of the series later on. But one of the things that I found fascinating, not only are there a dozen congressional districts, competitive congressional districts that we have rated anywhere from toss-up to tilt, lean, or likely along I-5, but also that it's such a long road that it's called different things in different places. I grew up in Oregon. It's called I-5 in Oregon. It's called I-5 in Washington. But then when you move into California, Northern California, it's just called 5. And then when you get to Southern California, it's called the 5. And so we
kind of like the Ohio State University. It's like some people say Ohio State University or the George Washington University.
And I had to do, and I was reaching out to all sorts of people. I was reaching out to friends that are in California, family that's in Oregon and in Washington. I reached out to Mark Z. Baraback of the LA Times to figure out what is Interstate 5 called in different places. But in Southern California, there were highways that had names with the in them before the 1950s, when the interstate highway system
The Pacific Coast Highway.
So the just kind of became a carryover as people started to use the numbers through the interstate system. And again, I don't want to demean any of your listeners, Jason, but if you did not know, the interstates are the ones that run north south, and are the odd numbers, and they run with the smallest on the west coast, and then the numbers get greater as you move east. Thus, I-5 on the west coast, I-95, Interstate 95 on the east coast, and then they run from the let's see, the even numbers run east-west and go up from south to north. So one of the main arteries in the south would be Interstate 10,
right?
But then you go up north that way. So
Yeah,
more information than anyone needed to know. But now
above that, like, and joins a lot of that Interstate 40. Like, that's a very long road too, and just north of I-10. So yeah.
Yeah. So then I started, all right, let's look at these congressional districts. And I started going from the Pacific Northwest. My West Coast bias, my Pacific Northwest bias is showing. And the first one is Washington's 3rd district, which is in Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
It's represented by Democrat Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, a freshman member, a first-term member of Congress. Washington has an open primary, system, all-party primary that isn't until later in the year. It looks like she's going to face Joe Kent again, the Republican who she defeated last time. And Republicans are, I guess maybe they're resigned to the fact that Joe Kent is going to be their nominee again. He brings a little more baggage to the table than what they would like, but he has professionalized his campaign. But this is one of the 10 toss-up districts that we have around the country. And Democrats, if they want to get the 4 seats that they need to gain to get to the majority, they're going to have to re-elect people like Gluesenkamp Perez. But this is going to be a tough district. Trump won it in 2020 over Biden. He's likely to win it again. Biden is breaking news that he is not exactly in a strong political position right now, and so she's in a tough fight.
And then Oregon, your home state, they gained a seat in reapportionment, which, anytime a seat goes to a state that's not Florida or Texas is like kind of news, right? I mean, but Oregon gained a seat, and Oregon, like, I think that if I may, like the popular culture defining Oregon, it tends to be around like Portlandia, the show Portlandia, where everybody's liberal, or if people are upset about things, that it's associated with the some of the COVID unrest in the Portland area in the last few years, or if you're a sports fan, it's just disappointment because of the Trailblazers.
Ooh, ouch! I signed up for this. Holy cow! I didn't know we were going to go. Can I say this, that the draft is coming. Blazers have a couple good picks. Unfortunately, this appears to be the weakest draft in years. But one of the current centers for the Blazers, his name is DeAndre Ayton. He used to play for the Phoenix Suns.
Oh, I know. I'm well aware of DeAndre,
and he's got some promise. But anyway, he looks too much like Greg Oden, who is one of the worst draft picks in NBA history. The Blazers drafted Greg Oden instead of Kevin Durant, which, for those of you who don't even know, the Blazers also drafted a guy named Sam Bowie instead of Michael Jordan back in the day. So the cut runs deep on the Blazers in the NBA draft. But anyway, all right, let's get back to I-5. I'll steer us back.
I will say this: the Blazers did draft well with Bill Walton. He did get hurt and was hurt through most of his career, but he did deliver a championship to them. Just
the only championship, 1977, the only championship the Blazers have ever won.
And also
came close a few other years.
Bill Walton. So.
Yeah, exactly. One of the great broadcasters in his final years, great broadcasters of all time. So I-5, when you get down into Oregon, it basically it runs between 2 competitive districts. East of I-5 is Oregon's 5th congressional district, represented by Republican Lori Chavez DeRemer, another toss-up district. Democrats are excited because they nominated Janelle Bynum, who defeated Chavez DeRemer in 2 state legislative races. So, well, that's a great track record. Let's go for it. Hopefully she can pull it off for Congress. And then west of I-5 is the 6th congressional district, represented by Democrat Andrea Salinas. It's further down on the list of competitive races. It's listed as, we have it rated as likely Democratic. Republican Mike Erickson is running again. He's actually still suing Salinas for an ad that ran in the 2022 campaign, and hasn't focused as much on this race. And so we'll see. I think Democrats would have to be in a pretty rough shape, I think, for Salinas to lose. And then you keep going further south is Oregon's 4th congressional district, represented by Democrat Val Hoyle. This is more of a kind of a bank shot. Republicans are trying to hold the congresswoman accountable for some alleged wrongdoing when she was state labor commissioner. And so it's again further down the list of competitive races. But Oregon, for a state that doesn't usually have a lot of excitement at the federal level, has 3 competitive congressional districts. So it's a great time.
Yeah. I could say, I could, the thing that occurred to me, just thinking back on my own memories of like Oregon politics, is that it is one of those weird places where it seems like it's just all in one direction, but the state does kind of contain a lot of multitudes and a lot of context, because it's not a clear cut. It's not Portlandia. I mean, there are parts of Portland, all great satire comes from some kernel of truth. But it's an interesting place, and it's not just the Earl Blumenauer is a great representative, retiring Democratic rep from Portland, but he is not like the represent all of Oregon, right? Where some people think like, there's the guy with the bike pins and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah, I mean, in a way, when you look at maps that are colored by red or blue, Oregon is a blue state. I would argue that Oregon is actually a red state with some big blue islands.
Right.
Portland, Eugene, which is home to the University of Oregon, and then a little bit now in Central Oregon, which has experienced a lot of, in the Bend, Redmond area, which has experienced a lot of growth, probably from liberals from California, is what the Republicans would say. But there is a strong, once you get out of the cities, a strong Republican, conservative, libertarian, Western freedom, like a lot of themes that go through Oregon.
Guns and mountain bikes is how I like to describe Bend. It's an interesting place. I mean, it's all very interesting. And then you get to California, which again, easy to parody, the Californication, of politics, Gavin Newsom, all libs, and it's just not. I mean, you as soon as you cross the border in Oregon, it's more, that northern part of it is more like what you're describing, with a big libertarian streak. It's a heavy agricultural, like part of the state. I mean, all of California to a certain degree is an agricultural center, but it's not like Los Angeles. It's not like San Francisco.
And some of my Southern California friends, they call Northern California pre-Oregon. Like, they don't even want to have anything to do with Northern California, because it's so different than Southern California. And we don't, I don't know if you want to went through all the districts. In Northern California, you have, Democratic Congressman Josh Harder, which we just added to our list of competitive races in the likely Democratic column. But then you have Republican John Duarte, who another toss-up district, and David Valadao, Republican, who seems to always be in a competitive race. He actually lost a couple cycles ago and then won again in a redrawn district. But one of the themes that we're seeing there, though, is this in the Central Valley. Biden is struggling. His numbers are depressed in areas all around the country, but he's struggling. I think part of it is his underperforming with Hispanic voters, and so that would be good news for vulnerable Republicans like John Duarte and David Valadao, but also potentially bad news for a congressman like Josh Harder, who would prefer to have a strong top of the ticket. And this comes at a time when Democrats feel like they underperformed in California in 2022 because Governor Gavin Newsom wasn't doing as strongly as what they thought. So they thought, okay, well, 2024, it's going to be better, right? Biden's going to be at the top. We're going to be crushing it. And he's not crushing it. I mean, he's not on the verge of losing California, but he's struggling. Yeah. And that is a dynamic that that Democrats are having to deal with.
It's almost like the like California in particular, and I think because really the Democrats lost the majority in 2022 in California and New York. Really, I mean, like but by I mean that was more than the margin of the Republican pickups that got them the majority. And it's almost like, and as you said, like they're like, well, we overperformed in the midterm, so we're just going to clean up in a general election because the top of the ticket always like generates a lot of excitement. But it almost seems like this election, particularly in California, has midterm dynamics. Like people don't want to talk about the president. It seems like a referendum on the president. Whereas, and then you also have this thing where it's not like people are excited about Trump necessarily.
Right.
I mean, this could be a situation where both Trump and Biden underperform, and maybe this opens up a lot of doors for somebody like RFK Jr. or Jill Stein or Cornel West. Maybe they get into the 5% plus range or whatever. I mean, I think you're right. Biden's not in danger of losing the state, but he might win it with like 40%. Or something like that,
Right.
which
Right.
it just scrambles the dynamic that we're used to for competitive races in places like the Central Valley and then in Orange County, which sort of rounded out your list. I love that you put California at the bottom, by the way, in your story.
You gotta do it.
But it's fascinating because a lot of these Democrats are on their own, and a lot of them are new. They're relatively new to Congress, to national politics. So they're kind of on their own, or they're like they're challenging younger or newer members of Congress, like Michelle Steele is on your list. I mean, it's just, and there's weird ethnic politics too. Like Michelle Steele is Korean American. She's running as a Vietnamese American. I mean, like how that plays out in a Southern California suburban swing, slightly conservative district. I mean, it's just like it's fascinating, and like we just don't have a lot of guides to go on from the past.
Yeah, and the mindset has shifted from that Democrats hoping for a boost in the presidential year to hoping that voters voice their frustration, anger, dissatisfaction, that they keep that contained to President Biden and still trust either Democratic candidates or Democratic challengers in the down ballot races, including the House races. And that is that's an unknown, right? That's one of the key questions, because the trend has been a lack of ticket splitting. And so if Biden is struggling at the top, not only to boost his margins in districts he won in 2020, but losing districts that he won in 2020, including some in Orange County, then that is going to make Democrats' life more difficult. And what was fun as we got to Southern California and I was trying to figure out which districts were along the five. Some of them it's narrow, like there are narrow strips. It's not as clean as some of the ones up in the Pacific Northwest. But to me, Orange County is fascinating because it for a couple generations it was a Republican island in a blue state.
This is where Richard Nixon's from.
Right, Yorba Linda. Right, you can go to the birthplace and library, or at least the library birthplace. But but it shifted against Trump. But now one of my working theories is that Biden, during his time in office, has come to personify maybe what some of those voters thought would happen when Democrats were in power, right? That there's the either economic struggles or the sense of chaos that people are reminded, like, oh, this is why I voted for Republicans for so long, because I didn't want all this to happen. And I think there's potential that Biden underperforms where he did in 2020, even though he's running against the same candidate that Orange County voters previously said that they weren't really interested in, that being Donald Trump.
Yeah, speaking of chaos, I mean, if you're worried about chaos and the choices between Biden and Trump, I mean, it's for highly educated suburban voters, they don't have a lot of places to go. This is where somebody like Nikki Haley probably would have really put a scare into the Democrats, someone like that could really have appealed to. I mean, I know this is a cliche to say, like the Chamber of Commerce or Rotary Club Republicans, or however we want to use the term for what used to be called a mainstream Republican. But like that's the type of candidate that Republicans in Orange County and so forth seem to have like rewarded in the past, but like now it's like when I think this has got to be, I'm sure you've seen a lot of these stories about double haters, one of my favorite terms now for pollsters, that they hate both Biden and Trump. Like, this must be where a lot of double haters live.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if Nikki hit both parties, I'm convinced both parties are trying to lose the presidential election. Like, they're like, who is the person we can nominate with the most baggage? Because if it had been a different on either side, if it had been a different candidate, I think we'd be talking about the race. We'd be talking about the race very differently. So one of the key contests along the five is the open Katie Porter seat. Republican Scott Baugh is running there. He lost to Katie Porter last time. She ran for the Senate unsuccessfully, so it's an open seat. And then he's running against Democrat State Senator Dave Min, who during the campaign had a DUI and is kind of, Republicans are going to talk about that, but they're also going to talk about his record in Sacramento. That's kind of a key district where I think we probably won't know who wins that district based on how slow California counts votes. We may not know it for a couple of weeks, but if we did, it would tell us about how the night is going.
Also, Baugh is not exactly a no baggage candidate himself, with Porter, as the Porter people made good use of in 2022. So yeah, this is again, we do this for a living, right? We cover politics and talk about politics for a living, but this, presidential race aside and the stakes of it, like, this is the dynamics of the race, particularly in the House. We haven't even talked about Senate races. We can do that for another time. We really, there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to keep track of, and I'm looking forward to the next few weeks, because seeing how these races, just these dozen races on the I-5 develop.
Well done.
Actually, isn't it? It's I-5 the 5.
I believe so. We're going to get some feedback. Feel free to drop in the comments if you think I screwed up this the naming in the different geographical areas, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
Well, Nathan, thanks for breaking this down. We will, and this is part of an occasional series that you're writing. You can find it on rollcall.com, and of course with your newsletter, Inside Elections. And I know we're about to get very busy with conventions and so forth, so it will be I think I admire you for saying an occasional series, because sometimes things just get away from you. Conventions tend to suck a lot of oxygen out of the room and schedules. So, but I know that we will return to this. When
there will be more. It will be more. 95, I believe, has 5 districts. They're kind of broken up. You've got North Carolina's first, but then up in New England you have New Hampshire and Maine second, and some big ones up there. And then we're not ignoring the middle of the country. There are at least a couple in Middle America that are going to be featured as well. So stay tuned.
All right. Thanks again for listening out there, and we'll catch you later. Happy Independence Day.